Alan, this Rio Caribe bar has been one that, from the beginning, when I have been carrying it, it's one of those bars that I've often gone into the garage just to taste, and it's changed over the years in terms of the kind of flavors, but it still remains one of my favorites. And so when I was thinking, let's partner and create a bar that you make for the Chocolate Garage, I thought, oh, Rio Caribe, clearly. Because I want to do something that was pure chocolate and really lovely. And then also listening to customers who are coming in and asking, for things that they like and that they've been interested in. Salt was something that definitely came up, as well as nibs. And so I knew you didn't necessarily want to do another nib bar because they are a lot of work, but I thought that it would be an interesting combination. Before you made it, did that sound like something that was interesting, or an exciting, potentially interesting bar to make?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right that I don't necessarily sit around trying to figure out new nib bars to make, because it's, in terms of labor, it's very, very labor intensive, and it takes more people, it takes a longer amount of time, it's messy. There are all kinds of reasons to not do a nib bar, but when you suggested the Rio Caribe with nibs and sea salt, it just kind of made a lot of sense immediately to me, especially knowing that you've been so supportive of the Rio Caribe and have enjoyed it so much. It just seemed to me like you have kind of a personal connection with that bar, and by doing a special release for the Chocolate Garage, there was a Rio Caribe with nibs. Then we could kind of put something special out there. It would make you happy, make your customers happy, and then allow us to experiment with something that we wouldn't necessarily do as a full-time release.
Right. Yeah. Interestingly, I just was thinking as we were talking about the salt and the nibs and the Rio Caribe, where the beans are from, and they're from this tiny little peninsula that juts out off of like the northeast corner of Venezuela. That what struck me when I saw it physically on a map was you could practically snip off the peninsula and it would be floating out there next to Trinidad, right? So really right in the sea, the salty sea, to be cheesy, kind of a natural combination for the beans to be combined with salt in a sense.
Yeah, you could look at it like that, and that is one of the interesting things about that location is it's how close it is to Trinidad. So it's sort of it's Venezuelan clearly, but on the other hand, in terms of the genetics of the area, you're probably going to find a nice mixture of genetics from Trinidad and Venezuela. And I think that's one of the things that makes the cacao from the Paria Peninsula unique. I really haven't tasted anything else from Venezuela that tastes exactly like it.
So in terms of the old classification system of cacao, those sort of three main types, the Criollo, Trinitario, and the Forastero, is this a Trinitario or a mix between Criollo and Trinitario, or what is it?
In terms of those three old types that I generally try to stay away from because I think they're confusing. But that said, with that disclaimer, I would say if I had to choose, it would definitely fall within the Trinitario realm. There's definitely a mixture of genetics there. Some of the beans are a little bit lighter, some are a little bit darker. You've got clearly earthy, chocolatey, nutty flavors, and at the same time some fruitiness. So I think you get flavors in those beans that you'll often find in lots of other different, sort of families of cacao, whether it's what you call Forastero or Criollo, or any of the sort of subtypes in different areas, especially in Venezuela. You just really get a nice complexity, a nice variation of different flavors in that bar.
So when you mentioned the light beans and the darker beans, you're referring to the lighter beans maybe being indicative of more of this classic term of Criollo, and the darker beans being maybe more Trinitario, more on the other side of things, correct?
Perhaps.
Okay.
It's impossible. Yeah, without doing some genetic testing on the leaves of the trees, it would be impossible to tell for sure, but, you know, probably.
Okay, and had I not framed it as which of these three old categories that we don't use anymore would you classify this in? If I had not asked it that way and just said, tell me, you know, what kind of genetics is this, or what kind of type would you, or variety would you call this, what would you have said?
I would have said it's a hybrid population, and that some more work would need to be done to determine specifically what families of cacao from the 12 that we now know to exist, and there could be perhaps more, have sort of lent their genes to that population. So it could be as simple as one or two different families, or it could be more than that.
Okay, yeah. And one of the things that it just that surprises me about cacao, and wanted to double check this with you, if you have sort of a group of trees that are genetically diverse in an area, you can have, because of the fact that these little cacao flowers are being pollinated by this little insect, if an insect is moving around from one tree to the next, you do end up having, even on a particular tree, genetically different pods that are growing off of that tree, because they may have gotten pollen from the neighboring tree that was a bit of a different variety. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the pods themselves, I don't know if it's accurate to classify them as genetically different, but the seeds inside the pods definitely are. So, for example, each seed has genes from the mother, and those are the genes from the tree, and then genes from the father, which are carried, you know, via an insect and pollen, and then used to create, you know, essentially allow that seed to form. So you can have seeds within the same pod which go from white to pink to light purple, because there's, you know, different genetic material went into the fertilization of the different ova, I guess, you know, the individual seeds. So that's kind of the interesting thing, is the pods, they may all look the same on the outside, but as soon as you cut them open, you start to see that it's not as simple as saying, well, everything from this tree is all the same.
Right, right. It's so interesting. Not that I didn't like my previous career, I really did. And it's so funny how in chocolate, all this genetic stuff that I studied and applied keeps coming back. When you talk about the seeds and the pod, and you're trying to distinguish between, you know, those two things, it reminds me of this basic thing in genetics called the maternal effect, which I don't know, back in university, I remember studying about the snails and how there's a greater impact from the mother, because the egg, in addition to having just the chromosomes, the basic chromosomes that are passed on, has all this other stuff like the proteins and the RNAs and all of that. And so there's this leaning towards this maternal effect, where sometimes you end up getting a phenotype, which means like the physical manifestation, that actually defies the genotype because of that maternal effect, because of those extra things that are added, or that are there, because the egg is not just chromosomes, it has many other things that the mother has also produced. Anyway, this is digressing, but fascinating, and I guess that's why this is what keeps us all so excited about cacao, is that not only does it taste totally delicious, but the more you learn about it and the more you discover and study it, it's just such a strange and complex and really fun field of study, I suppose.
It is, and cacao is so unlike other fruit out there. It's, you know, you just can't, aside from, you know, just a handful of closely related trees that are by and large not used for food. You know, there's just nothing else like it. It's not like an apple where you can say, well, a pear is somewhat similar to an apple, or, you know, even a peach looks similar enough to an apple. It's so different and so foreign in a way, and so unique that it fascinates, I think.
Yes, definitely, and it's delicious.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you.